It starts with silence, not a peaceful, deep-in-the-night quiet. This is a thin, unsettling quiet, the kind that means something is broken. You don't notice it at first, but then you take a long drive, the kind that used to leave your windshield decorated with a Jackson Pollock splatter of 1,000 tiny collisions. Now, it's perfectly unnervingly clean. The sound of summer has changed too. That rhythmic chirping of crickets? Gone. The low hum of a bee visiting the flowers in your garden? Vanished. This quiet is the sound of an engine sputtering out, the sound of the tiny six-legged engines that run our world, grinding to a halt. Because in this world, all the insects are gone. And this silence is just the beginning. The real changes are happening in the fields, in the forests, and much, much closer to home. They're happening right on your dinner plate. Welcome to a planet that just fired its most important workers. Have you ever wished that all the insects would just disappear? No more mosquitoes whining in your ear. No more wasps dive-bombing your picnic. For a moment, a world without them sounds like a paradise, a cleaner, less annoying place. For the first few days, it might even feel that way. You'd enjoy backyard barbecues without swatting flies. You'd sleep with the windows open, free from the threat of a mosquito bite. The world would seem tidier, more sterile. But this peace is a dangerous illusion. It's the calm before a storm that will dismantle our world, piece by piece. That initial relief gives way to a horrifying new reality. A reality where the absence of these tiny creatures reveals a catastrophic truth. We've silenced the very gears of the global ecosystem. The first and most immediate domino to fall is pollination. We tend to think of bees, but they're just the most famous members of a massive, vital workforce. Butterflies, moths, beetles, wasps, and even tiny flies are all part of nature's intricate delivery service. About 75% of the world's crops that produce fruits and seeds depend on these pollinators, at least in part. And globally, nearly 90% of all flowering plant species rely on them. Without them, the world's color palette begins to fade. Wildflowers, those brilliant carpets of purple, yellow, and red, are among the first to go. They simply can't reproduce. Fruit trees blossom, but their flowers are barren, never turning to fruit. The effect on our food supply is swift and brutal. Imagine walking into a grocery store. The produce aisle is a ghost town. Apples, cherries, blueberries, and strawberries are gone. Almonds, which are almost entirely dependent on honeybee pollination, vanish. What about your morning coffee or that piece of chocolate for dessert? Gone. The coffee plant and the cacao tree both rely on insect pollinators, the latter on a tiny fly no bigger than a pinhead. Many vegetables, from beans to squash, would become incredibly scarce. In parts of China, the local extinction of pollinators has already forced workers to do this job by hand, painstakingly brushing pollen from one blossom to another. Imagine that reality on a global scale. This is just the beginning, a world of silent fields and empty shelves. But the silence in the fields is just one part of the story. The collapse is now spreading, moving up the food chain. The collapse of the plant world is a slow, creeping disaster. But a much faster collapse is already tearing through the animal kingdom. Insects are the foundation of countless food webs. They are the planet's great converters. They turn indigestible things like leaves and wood into protein-rich bodies, the perfect food for a staggering number of other animals. Birds that feed on insects would be the first to suffer mass starvation. Reptiles and amphibians, like lizards and frogs, would die off in droves. Small mammals, like shrews and bats that hunt in the night sky, would find their food source gone overnight. This is the catastrophic unraveling of the food chain. Think of it like a finely woven hammock. Insects are the millions of threads running through it. When you remove them, you don't just create a few holes. The entire structure unravels and everything it supports comes crashing down. Predators that eat the insect eaters soon starve too. The ecological silence we first noticed is now echoed by the silence of the birds and the emptiness of the forests. In a matter of months, the intricate web of life built over millions of years begins to disintegrate. As the living world starves, a different, more grotesque problem begins to pile up. As the world outside grows quiet, another, more gruesome problem starts to pile up, literally. We've lost our pollinators and the base of our food web, but we've also fired the planet's cleanup crew. Insects like dung beetles, termites, and fly larvae are the unsung heroes of decomposition. They are the world's janitors, breaking down dead things, fallen trees, and animal waste. Without them, this process grinds to a halt. Dead animals would litter the landscape, decaying slowly from only bacteria and fungi. This creates a breeding ground for disease. Animal waste would pile up, choking the soil and contaminating our water. We've actually seen a version of this. When cattle were first introduced to Australia, the native dung beetles weren't adapted to cow dung. The continent was quickly overwhelmed with filth. The only solution was to bring in European dung beetles to clean up the mess. In a world without insects, there'd be no backup plan. Nutrients locked in dead organic matter wouldn't return to the soil. No termites to break down wood, no ants to aerate the ground. Soil fertility would plummet. This makes it even harder to grow the few wind-pollinated crops we have left. We'd be living in a stagnant world, drowning in its own undecomposed waste. And this is the moment the ecological nightmare arrives at our own doorstep. The empty produce aisles are now joined by barren meat and dairy sections, since livestock that rely on insect-pollinated feed like alfalfa are also gone. Our diet would be reduced to a bland, nutritionally poor menu of wind-pollinated grains like wheat, rice, corn, and oats. The rich diversity of flavors and nutrients we get from fruits and vegetables would become just a memory. The economic fallout would be devastating. That pollination service alone is estimated to be worth between $235 and $577 billion to global food production every year. And it's not just food. Industries like cotton and some plant-derived medicines would also collapse. In a final, cruel irony, the few resilient insect species that might survive could erupt into uncontrollable plagues. Without their natural predators, they could devastate the meager grain crops we have left. Our world wouldn't just be quieter and emptier, it would be poorer, sicker, and hungrier. The very foundation of human civilization would begin to crumble. This grim future isn't a science fiction plot. It's the direction we're heading. Globally, insect populations are in steep decline. Some studies show drops of over 40%, with biomass falling dramatically in recent decades. It's a crisis driven by habitat loss, widespread pesticide use, and a changing climate. But this future isn't set in stone. The solution doesn't require a technological miracle. It starts in our own backyards and communities. You can be part of the solution. Plant native wildflowers to feed pollinators. Cut back on pesticides in your garden. Let a corner of your yard grow a little wild. It's all about making our human spaces more welcoming to the tiny creatures that keep our world running. Insects are not pests to be eradicated. They are the structural and functional base of nearly every ecosystem on Earth. They are the pollinators, the decomposers, the food source. They are the tiny, tireless engines that make our planet live and breathe. A world without them is a world spiraling into silence, decay, and collapse. So the next time you see a bee on a flower or hear a cricket in the evening, don't just see a bug. See a critical worker, a vital thread in the fabric of life. recognize that their future and ours are one and the same.